Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of On the Way Home. Perhaps you are sitting down with your coffee and listening, or perhaps you are on your way home. This is a great way to make that commute just go by in a flash by listening to the brilliant people we have on this podcast. Now, my name is Michael Braithwaite, and I have the great pleasure of working with the fantastic folks at Blue Door. So Blue Door and our partners, the Canadian Alliance on Homelessness, put on this podcast. Check out the great work they're doing at the Canadian Alliance on Homelessness at www.caeh.ca. Now, my kids always say, you don't have to say that first part, Dad, www. But listen, I'm going to anyways, because just in case you forget, moving forward, if you want to become a Built for Zero community, they have all sorts of training and information and ways you could get involved in ending homelessness across this country or support your organization in ending homelessness. Check them out. And of course, my organization, we do work in Peel region, York region, which is our main base, and Durham, right across the top of the GTA, with our construction social enterprise construct, with our housing programs at Blue Door, transitional long-term support of our inclusion program, that's INN inclusion, which is for 2S LGBTQ plus youth, supportive semi-independent living, which is super cool, the only program of its sort north of Toronto, and we hope to grow that. So great work happening at Blue Door and CAEH. That's not what we want to talk about today. We're here to talk with an incredible human being. Why? Well, you're going to find out. And I'll tell you a little more about it as we talk. But I have Marc Boychuk with me today. Marc has been a previous guest on the predecessor podcast to this podcast, Out of the Blue. Incredible human being doing big things. And since I last talked to him a couple of years back, has continued to do that. And this is a guy, which you're going to hear about, saw an issue, took action, and has a full-time job in a totally different field. Marc, welcome to the pod.
Hello, Michael. It's good to see you again and talk with you.
Awesome.
You wouldn't believe it, but a lot's happened even since I've returned from Toronto.
Yes. And Marc has mentioned, we did a live podcast with Marc. You might have seen a little bit of it, but we had some internet problems. So I said, let's get you back, man. People can't miss out on this. Marc, I'm going to ask you the first question we ask everyone who joins the podcast, and then we're going to hear more about you and your journey and the amazing work you're doing, and maybe some tips on how to do that work in the type of community, if it's a rural community. But the first question is, what does home mean to you?
Oh, that's a good question. It's definitely changed over these last couple of years when I'm out on the streets and handing somebody a coat or a blanket. And when I come home and it's warm and I'm safe and I can close the door, it's really changed what the meaning of home is. It's safety. It's being able to be yourself and be safe in a spot that's yours. And seeing the struggles that people have without one it's to appreciate it some days, not appreciate it, but I'm really, really grateful I have one, but it's hard to come home some days knowing some people are living in the rough and in such tough conditions.
Yes, and we were just talking before we started the podcast. Right now, you are in Peace River, Alberta, where it is -40, you said?
Yeah, with the wind today. So she's just under 30 with some wind. So it's a little nippy when you have a river. That water there is a little cold. It's cold.
We said it's definitely not shorts weather today. My brother, I think he wears shorts until about -10, and then he changes his pants. But he is what we call that true kind of Canadian in denial, but very, very cold. Now, Marc, I want to tell a little bit of your story and your background, because many people that come on this podcast are people that full-time work in this field, but that is not the case for you. In fact, when I saw you at the Canadian Alliance on Homelessness conference in Toronto, you paid your own way to get there, and you do a lot of this work. All this work that you do, which is tremendous, is on your own time. Tell us a little bit of your journey into this work, how you arrived to where you are now.
Well, actually, I was able to get a scholarship for the conference due to being a lived experience applicant. So that was kind of nice there. But I did have to take vacation from my job to attend. But yeah, it's once I realized in our community that, and we live in a small rural community of just under 7,000 people. But once I discovered there was people out there and absolutely zero supports, hard to swallow to just sit back and do nothing. And so I was able to involve myself with a few organizations and get involved in some projects and learn and attend conferences and help support the Cs here and start things in our community. So it's been a real honor and a real journey to just meet some of these amazing people that are struggling and learn from them and just be where we are today with the way our community's wrapping our arms around a lot of these issues.
Well, let's paint a picture of Peace River, Alberta. Many people may not be familiar. And so when people understand what homelessness looks like in the city of Toronto, city of Vancouver, city of Edmonton, or Calgary, it's very different, right? You're in a very rural community, Peace River. Paint the picture of Peace River. And let's go back when you started. What services were around for people experiencing homelessness, and what spurred you into action?
Well, ironically, I did a little awareness campaign where of 2018, I slept out on the streets. But right prior to that, we had violence in our post office. And when I slept out on the streets, that was one of two available spots a person could sleep to stay alive. It was that or the ATM machine next door. After that, they locked the doors at night in the post office, leaving only the ATM machine for anybody to sleep in. So from there, looked at how many people we had sleeping on the streets, and through our homeless estimation, we had more people sleeping on the street than any 21 rural community did the study at the same time. And so, it's just, we have a prison here in our community as well, which has often been used by our prosecutors who were showing people compassion and maybe sentencing somebody for 6 months down in jail. And our hospitals were run with people showing up, and then so the community was quickly able to just get the means needed to get a shelter opened up right pronto to stop a lot of these people sleeping on the streets. People would be driving around in their cars, plugging in heaters, is disconnecting their outside plugins because they're being used to keep people alive. It's a lot of those things and what goes on in rural communities, because we don't have people congregating prior to this. See them late at night when they felt it was safe to sneak into the post office or at the ATM machines. And not only that, the violence that they experienced sleeping in these spots, because the bars get out and stuff like that, and people stumble across. And so there was a lot of issues going on that were just unacceptable. And so we'd find people at campsites sleeping in their vehicles. And now that we open, just this week alone, we just started going to 3 shifts. So we've gone from having 0 services to a shelter that's now being run 24 hours a day with addiction programs and caseworkers showing up and mental health workers showing up. So we've gone a long ways here in a short period of time, and things are really picking up steam and looking hopeful. So,
well, Marc, what makes you an even better guy is you keep saying we and we. This started with you, my friend. You saw something, you took action, you continue to do that. And I think, like, if people understand, Peace River is like many rural communities throughout Canada, that, hey, the services aren't here. And I think you've told me stories of even medically, if you need some services, psychiatric support, etc. It's not right next door, right? It's a bit of a journey.
Yeah, the closest, if any mental health distress state, or they get through the Mental Health Act, they get formed, the RCMP are obligated to transport them to a designated facility, which is either 2.5 hours away, or even further, 8 hours, almost 8 hours away. So this is tying up a lot of RCMP officers in our community, and we specifically designed a task force to help work with the hospital and to resolve this issue and how we can approach the government for solutions. So it's a big issue for, but it's not a big issue if it worked, but it's not working, Michael. And we're getting people not even going to the hospital now. So if you go to the hospital and self-in, it's a whole nother story, and there's no help available. So you almost have to be arrested and transported to get to see a doctor around here if you're in a real bad distressed state. And so we're having those, and our RCMP are handling over 90% of their cases now related these last couple of weeks. So they're being overwhelmed with mental health cases and with very little training to handle it. So we're trying to address that issue province-wide. It's not just in our little rural community, it's in every rural community at this time.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because you've taken a different approach. Let's talk about the coordinated approach. You've brought together the region and different communities to say, hey, let's work on this together. Can walk me through that, how that all came about and what's happening that way, and why?
Okay, so advocating by myself for quite a while, and really I with our health authority here. And so right before I was about to throw in the towel and have my last meeting with them, 2 other town council members approached me and say, hey, I want to help you advocate for this. And I said, I was beyond excited. I said, wow, this is, and it sparked the idea, like, why don't I get a town council member from every that surrounds me? Because we have 5 different municipalities and councils that surround Peace River. And so I presented at each one of these councils, and it was overwhelmingly 100% success that they allowed a councillor to attend these meetings. And we had one last night, and it's just amazing what a small group of people could do. And I realized that I needed a little help here. There's some good government around here that have got a lot of experience, a lot of connections, and I got them in a room together, and boy, we've met the top chess. We're meeting with the top levels of our government. We're advocating. We're getting groups to help us advocate now province-wide. It's just really picking up steam, and we have the RCMP involved with us and our mental health association. So we have all the people there that can really speak it to what the issues are, so that we can find out the true and the most important issues and start dealing with the group. And whereas before it was just always HS, you need to fix this, or government, you need to fix. We're coming at it as a region, as a community, as businesses, as everybody, as citizens, and saying we want to solve these issues, and everybody's willing to pitch in. And it's so far, and we're getting some amazing things happening here, and really looking forward to. Looks like 5 years down the road.
Well, and I think if people are learning from this, what I hear you saying too, and we've talked about this even with my organization, is one voice sometimes doesn't carry that far. We have multiple voices from multiple sectors coming together as one to say this matters. You get a lot more momentum. And it sounds like your group's very solution focused, right? It's not, hey, let's complain and point fingers. We need solutions. You think?
Oh, and what is the best solution? We're not even, we know that we need to get the right people to make the right solution, because we're trying to attack some pretty complex issues right at the core and resolve those. So, even when we talk about transporting the patients with the RCMP in the room, do this, will this work? And they say no, because we have to look at the act, because if they're foreign, go. So we can't change our hospital designation or anything like that unless it's a designated site. So we're attacking the Mental Health Act province to redefine what kind of solutions we can come up with smaller hospitals so that we don't have to transport these patients such long ways, when we can connect them to psychiatrists through telehealth, or deal with the supports in the local area instead of shipping people 5 hours or 8 hours away to a foreign community when they're in a mental health stress. So we're really excited about who we've got and who we've met and the solutions we're already coming up with.
Yeah, that is exciting, and you're right. I mean, you're in distress, and not only are you using those resources, you're taking someone off the street for, and I'm sure in a small community, having officers disappear for that long, they don't have a plethora of people to take their place, right, and resources. But so Marc, let me understand this too. This is not your sector. You didn't go to school for this. You have a full-time job. How do you do it? Like, how many hours a week are you putting into this versus your life and full-time job?
Yeah, that's a good. I don't actually even keep track. I wrote down the other day all the organizations and the committees and it kind of blew my mind, because I was involved in 20 groups and organizations around mental health or health of our area. So definitely needs to be honed down a little bit, as I'm focusing mostly on this task force and housing in the shelter at this time. But I work shift work, so it allows me a lot of time at work. I work 12-hour shifts. I've been at my job for over 32 years, and so I get a lot of vacation and a lot of days off. So it seems I'm at work all the time, but I do only work half a month at a time with turnover days. So it allows me a lot of time to get involved, attend meetings through Zoom. Has been really helpful, and to study. So it's not my sector I'm very passionate about. And I got into politics recently, as I was telling you as well, to see what I can do from the municipal viewpoint. And I believe that is the avenue to go. And that's kind of forces going, is getting all the municipalities to advocate for the same thing for all of us. And we can't just solve it in Peace River and push it to different communities. We have to solve it and keep going from there. So it's some months it's a full-time job, and other times I get little lulls, which I enjoy, and take my time to research and do so. But it's definitely a passion and a full-time hobby of mine that I enjoy, and it's very rewarding to see us making ground. And to tell you the truth, when I was in Toronto there, I lost a very close friend and coworker to the mental health side there. And I was wondering, what the heck am I even doing? Am I making any headway? Am I doing any good? And later that night, I got a message from one of my peers. I nominated and awarded the Queen's Jubilee Medal. It just was what I needed at that time, because it's discouraging some days, because tough to see a lot of the suffering that goes on out there. And I know I'm in it for the long haul, but it's also a very slow process, the angles I'm working at it at. So some days are harder than others, but it's very rewarding in a lot of ways.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm with you. It can get discouraging. I've often talked about, just lately, I was in our men's program, our men's emergency shelter, and a guy told me that, he was he had just moved over to our transitional housing, which was brand new. And he said, hey, you know what? I've been involved in Blue Door a long time. In fact, I was in the original Porter Place, which is our men's emergency housing, when it opened. Marc, it opened in 1989. This gentleman had been 30 plus years experiencing homelessness. My first thing is, we failed this guy. We failed him. Our system, myself, we failed him. We finally got him into transitional housing. But that's the silver lining I have to look at. We got to look at the small victories. You're an incredible person doing great things, and every loss of life is tragic, and I'm so sorry for that loss of your friend. Condolences. You're right, it can be. If anyone deserves that Queen's Jubilee medal, it is absolutely you, and you deserve all the medals, man. You really do. And we have to look at it. It's not an after school special. I tell people that, it is tough stuff. It is slow moving. Look, the experts tell us that this housing crisis didn't become a crisis until the 90s, when government stepped out of building thousands of social housing units each year in the States and Canada. And you just saw homelessness skyrocket, right? It was a policy change, and only good policy can fix bad policy, can fix this crisis. And that's what you're saying. Hey, let's get all the governments on board to do this. You are making a difference, my friend, bit by bit, rallying people. You're inspirational as well, I think, for others to things. Let's talk about that learning curve too. So, you first say, hey, I'm going to do this. And I hear you talking the lingo now, all this different kind of stuff. Like if you look at Marc 10 years ago to Marc now, learning curve's been pretty steep, I would guess.
Oh, heck yes. And that's the importance of collecting good data is, I thought, if we just do this, and I was very fortunate to learn that right in the get-go, because, I didn't get it stuck in my head that I had all the solutions. And when I talked to some people that were very well educated, and I didn't want to reinvent anything here, but I also didn't want to do which I've seen in other communities. It's just amazing how fluid actually what is even going on in our community, even with how things have changed since COVID. Prior to COVID, we only had 5 people a night in the shelter. We have 17 to 20 people a night, and the opioid crisis doubled since then. And so, just getting information and the right people to make that information, I've got no problem changing my mind. The meeting we had last night, we were almost on the wrong path, trying to think if we just did this, we could save the people a lot of problems. But we got to make sure that if we're doing or do any policy, that we really get the right information. And so that takes a lot of learning and a lot of studying. So that's where I'm grateful I have some spare time at work, and technology nowadays. We can download and listen to podcasts, and I've listened to almost all the Blue Door ones and made tons of notes when I'm out at work there. And so, yeah, the learning curve is huge, and it changes on a regular basis because it's such a complex issue, and we can't just solve one problem. There's so many problems that we need to address.
So what's next? What are you working on now? What's the future? What would you like to see when I talk to you in another year, and you're going to come back on the podcast? What are some good things in the works?
Well, I've been after supportive housing for a long time. So when I flew back from Toronto, I had a wonderful meeting with an organization called Métis Housing. And they're looking at bringing up supportive housing up here. They're building more housing units here starting right away. But it's the supportive housing angle that we really need. And so we some other units that they're very interested in for supportive housing, which would be massive. And we connected them to our Friendship Center and our women's shelters. So they're looking at how they can support those agencies there. We got our task force going that we're going to be standing up before all the municipalities here in January and February, and helping them. Shelter now open 24/7. So I'm looking at getting caseworkers and case plans in place now for the guys that are showing up. We've got meetings showing, addictions meetings going on there. We got support showing up in there. And what's really exciting is we got our business community really heavily involved. They're really concerned because crime has been going rampant in our community, right? So we've now got community really supportive and involved in wanting to understand and help support all these issues, social issues, because as a community, we can't be healthy unless, we're all healthy, right? And so now we're one big collaborative unit. It's amazing. We're going to solve issues here. It's just going to be, I'm just looking forward to the future here with a ton of hope, right from our town office, how our council members are getting involved, to our community and members, our business community, our members all around us. Things are just looking up and looking amazing. So I can't wait to see what next year brings, let alone 5 years down the road.
Well, listen, Marc, I love your optimistic approach. Thank you so much for your passion, your leadership, for your humanity. I think it is so inspiring, and thank you so much for taking the time to come on. And I think, listen, folks listening to this podcast are going to be inspired. Often when I talk about this, people will say, "What can I do? I feel like I could do nothing." I'm going to point and say, "Listen to Marc Boychuk. There's a guy that saw, if it's and really live that whole. If it's going to be, it's up to me." And made things happen. You're a humble man, and one that we so appreciate. Thank you so much for your time, for all you do, for coming on the podcast today.
Well, thank you for those kind words, Michael, and I really appreciate your support and all you guys do there.
Thank you, Marc. We'll talk to you again. Listen, we have a lot of different people on this podcast, all doing amazing work, but this is a guy that works 12-hour shifts, that is a full-time job, that saw an issue in his community and it had bothered him, and he took action. He's a man of action. I talked to Marc a few years ago when things were just getting rolling, and to see where he is today, I can't wait to talk to him in another year, or 5 years. He's going to have supportive housing. I guarantee you that, because he doesn't give up on it. Like most leaders that I admire the most, he's so humble to a fault, and give that guy all the medals is what I say. Just amazing and inspiring. You can do this. Yes, government plays a part in ending the homelessness crisis, but so do we as community members, right? Step up. If you can't do what Marc does, because that's pretty special, write to your local politicians, your provincial politicians, your federal politicians, push policy action on creating affordable housing, get involved, be part of the solution. Marc, that is someone who said, if it's going to be, it's up to me. He took it by the reins. He's got it done. And we're so grateful for his actions, and so inspiring stories, solutions to challenging problems, all of this on every episode of On the Way Home. And I guarantee it will never change. We'll see you next time on The Way Home.